Hey, sleepy minds. I'm the sleepwalking historian, where history drifts like dreams. Tonight's tale might just lull you to sleep. But first, don't forget to follow for more bedtime journeys through the past. Hey guys, tonight we slip into a world that smells like pine smoke, sweat, and the faint metallic scent of old bronze. You're out in the cold, really out there. No tavern, no tent, no toilet paper. Just endless trees, a cracked sky, and a small barbarian camp clinging to the edge of some forgotten plain. The fire spits sparks like it's annoyed at having to keep you warm. Your feet are already numb, even though you've wrapped them in two layers of fur and hope. A thin mist curls low to the ground, catching the light of flickering torches. You trudge into camp, your nose burning from the smoke, and someone grunts in your direction. It might be a greeting or a warning. Hard to tell. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough, drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The firewood pile is low. Again, you hear someone muttering about lazy fingers and a camp of children. You don't recognize the voice. It might be the new guy with the crooked jaw or that woman who sharpens her knives a little too loudly. The tribe doesn't have names like we do. It's more like Spear Fixer, Goat Watcher, or the one who keeps sneezing. You, at this point, are the quiet one who doesn't snore. Lucky you, the smell of burning spruce fills your lungs. You're standing near a crude pit lined with rocks, the fire licking at half-charred logs like a sleepy beast. Beyond the camp's edge, snow is already forming a crust over the open grass. One false step, and you'll crunch straight through into cold mud. You know because you did that earlier. Twice. Around you, barbarian life carries on, not with fanfare, but with that soft, grim persistence you only find in people who live too close to the earth. A woman is gutting a rabbit with surprising grace. A boy is chasing a goat who definitely doesn't want to be chased. Somewhere, someone is chewing bark. For reasons no one has ever fully explained. A few steps away, an older man, beard like tangled moss, sits on a stone and grinds what might be pine nuts between two bones. He hums a low, tuneless thing. It sounds like a lullaby, but with the wrong notes. He nods toward you without making eye contact and mutters something about sleeping with one eye open. The camp is nestled in a windbreak with thick trees on three sides. It's not a real village, more like a cluster of lean-tos and hide-covered frames. You've seen worse. You've also seen better. But none of them had that constant crackling wood sound mixed with the occasional sleepy wolf howl. And then there's the dog. Or is it a wolf? No one's sure. It lies curled near the fire, one eye always half open. It growls at newcomers and snores like it's been through 3 wars and doesn't care who knows. Some say it used to belong to a dead chieftain. Others claim it just wandered in one night and stayed because the soup wasn't bad. Historians still argue whether domesticated wolves in this region were family protectors or glorified alarm systems with fleas that you've been here a week, maybe 2. Time doesn't work the same when the sun disappears for half the day and your only clock is the hunger in your belly. The clan doesn't talk much. They grunt, gesture, hum, and sometimes stare deeply into the fire like they're trying to remember if they left their soul in there. It's peaceful in a jagged kind of way, like sleeping with a dagger under your pillow, but you've started to enjoy the cool metal on your cheek. Point 1 mainstream historical fact you've picked up. These so-called barbarians? They weren't all wild-eyed lunatics waving clubs. Many had structured lives, seasonal patterns, trade habits, and even, gasp, manners. Some could read runes. Others made complex metalwork that would still look cool in a modern hipster cafe. But back to you. Right now, you're sitting on a log, blowing on your fingers, wondering if your left boot is on sideways or if your toes are just permanently confused. You look up and notice the smoke rising straight into the sky, untouched by wind. That's usually a good sign, or a really bad omen, depending on who you ask. And in this camp, you'll get both opinions before someone throws a bone at a tree and calls it settled. A teen with a half-shaved head offers you a stick with what looks like burnt bread dough wrapped around it. You nod thanks, bite in, and nearly chip a tooth. You smile anyway. It's considered polite. A fringe tidbit. Some tribes in this region used to believe that if you slept with a pine cone under your tongue, you'd dream of your true enemy. Others just chewed it for the resin, claiming it kept the worms away. Worms from where, exactly, is never explained. You've stopped asking. The night deepens. The stars blink like they're cold too. You can hear the wind whispering through the trees beyond camp, and once in a while, something howls back. Maybe a wolf. Maybe a guy just stretching. Hard to tell out here. You pull your cloak tighter and sink lower on the log. Someone tosses another log on the fire, and the sparks leap into the air like tiny panicked fairies. No one laughs. They're saving their energy for tomorrow, whatever tomorrow decides to bring. Your eyelids start to get heavy. The cold's still here, sure, but it's become less of a shock and more like an annoying roommate. You think maybe, just maybe, you could get used to this. You wake up to the sound of someone cursing at a tree. Not loudly, just that hushed, angry whisper you get when someone's trying to chop wood with a dull axe before sunrise. You don't open your eyes yet. Instead, you listen, the creak of leather, the thump of logs hitting frozen ground, and the unmistakable crunch of someone stepping on the one dry branch in a 10-meter radius. Welcome to the Barbarian version of an early commute. You finally sit up, joints cracking like the firewood you wish you had more of. Your breath makes little clouds. You rub your eyes with the back of your sleeve, which now smells like meat, ash, and goat. Not your goat, either. No one really owns goats here. They just happen to live near you and occasionally scream like human children. This morning, the cold is mean. The kind of cold that doesn't ask permission before creeping into your spine. Your fingers ache, your toes feel imaginary, and you're pretty sure your teeth will shatter if you smile too wide. Welcome to Economics 101, Barbarian Edition, where the only real currency is firewood and whoever holds the axe is the closest thing to a central bank. You shuffle toward the woodpile. There's an unspoken rule here. If you're not doing something, you're in the way. And doing something usually means gathering fuel before but turns into a frozen meat pie. The axe is buried in a stump. You pry it loose. The handle is worn smooth from decades of hands, and the blade is chipped, like someone once tried to cut through rocks instead of pine. Which, frankly, tracks. You swing it once or twice to wake up your arms, then head for the trees. The forest nearby is dense and quiet, save for the ever-present wind that rustles like it's trying to gossip with the leaves. The snow is ankle-deep, and your boots squish with that familiar, damp complaint. You find a thin, crooked birch and start hacking away. The motion as dull and repetitive as the small talk back at camp that you're not alone out here. A girl, maybe 13, is hauling a bundle of sticks that seems twice her weight. She passes you without a word, her nose red, her breath fogging. She's got better posture than you. Probably better tax records too. If barbarians did that sort of thing, there's a system to all this. Good wood burns fast and hot. Wet wood smokes like a politician. And dry, seasoned wood, that's treasure. You once saw two men nearly come to blows over a knotted piece of ash they both claimed to have cut. The fight ended when the elder threw the log into the fire while yelling. Now no one gets it. Justice, not a mainstream historical fact. Archaeologists have found clear evidence that firewood was often rationed in colder barbarian climates, and entire family units would base their winter survival plans around estimated usage per day. One Scandinavian clan reportedly had a carved wooden calendar just to track whose turn it was to gather brush. No Google Calendar. Just cold hands and passive-aggressive muttering. That be why the time you return to camp, your arms are sore and your hands feel like they belong to someone else. You drop your haul near the pit, nod to a man who might be named Halder or might just grunt a lot, and warm your hands over a smoldering pile of last night's embers. Someone else is boiling water in a horn pot. That's right, horn. It's not great at heat distribution, but it's lightweight, and if it catches fire, well, free light show. You get handed a slab of something resembling bread. It's hard, dry, and vaguely nutty. You eat it anyway. Out here, calories are calories, even if they taste like seasoned bark. There's a growing debate near the fire. 3 men are arguing, low and half serious, about how many logs it really takes to stay warm through a full night. One says 4, one says 6. The third says it depends on the wind and how many people are snoring beside you. Historians still argue whether barbarian tribes developed specific fuel conservation techniques or just kept adding sticks until the fire scared off the cold. That a quirky tidbit. Some clans believed that trees could remember who cut them. If you felled a tree without asking the forest spirits, your fire might go out at midnight, or worse, summon fog wolves. So naturally, some people would knock on trunks, whisper thanks, or leave behind offerings like berries or bits of fur. You try that once. The tree fell sideways and crushed your boot. The spirits were clearly unimpressed. You spend the afternoon helping stack wood into tight, leaning towers. They'll fall eventually, but that's a problem for future you. A few others are working on a windbreak, using hide panels stitched together with sinew. There's no blueprint. They just squint at the sky, spit in the wind, and say things like, "Needs more curve." A small group drags a hollowed-out log to the center of camp. Inside, ember coals from last night, still warm. This is how they cheat the cold. They bury live coals in ash to keep them smoldering overnight, then revive them at dawn. Fire insurance, medieval dash style. By now, your cloak smells like 8 different kinds of smoke. Your knuckles are cracked, your shoulders ache, and a snowflake just went straight down your collar. But somehow it's okay. The sky's turning that soft gray blue, and the wind has quieted, like even the cold is too tired to bite. You glance around the camp. People are quieter now, focused, intent on stacking, sharpening, and stirring. One man sits cross-legged, carving notches into a bone. Another is rubbing fat into his boots while muttering to himself about last winter's mistakes. Everyone's preparing for something, even if they don't say what. That's the thing about life out here. It's not about thriving. It's about not dying. And in that very specific, very stubborn way, the barbarian economy works. Not on coin, not on credit, but on cracked wood, shared fires, and the occasional stolen log. You settle near the fire as the sky dims further. Someone throws a stick your way. You toss it on the flames. It crackles loudly, then settles into a soft burn that you've earned your warmth tonight. Supper's almost ready, or at least, something hot is steaming in a blackened cauldron, and people are starting to drift closer like moths with sore knees. You're not expecting a feast. This isn't a Roman villa with olives, lamb, and servants named Cassius. This is a barbarian camp, where food is function, not fantasy. You sit on your usual log, which has developed a distinct posterior groove that might now be legally yours. A girl with wind-burnt cheeks and a fur hat shaped like a dead fox hands you a wooden bowl. Inside, a murky, fatty broth with what looks like bone chips and one floating hair. Possibly yours. Possibly not. You sip it anyway. It's salty. It's hot. It's okay. The kind of meal that tricks your stomach into feeling full before it realizes there was no actual food involved. A chewy tendon brushes your lip. You keep chewing and pretend it's something intentional. The truth is, bone broth was a staple in many ancient societies, including barbarian tribes, not because it tasted good, but because it used every last bit of the animal. Bones, ligaments, Marrow, cartilage, nothing was wasted. Protein was precious, and boiling leftovers made meals stretch just a little further through long, brutal winters. The pot is communal. Everyone dips in, stirs, and slurps without judgment. Germ theory hasn't been invented yet, so your ancestors are blissfully unaware of how disgusting this all is by modern standards. Lucky them. You watch a man crush dried herbs between two stones and sprinkle them into his bowl. Fancy. You try to copy him with a handful of snow and a pine needle. The result is less gourmet, more forest accident, but you eat it anyway. Then comes the drink. Someone passes around a leather bladder full of homemade ale. You take a tentative swig. It tastes like regret and moldy apples. It burns slightly going down, and your face makes a shape you didn't know it could. The woman next to you snorts. Whether it's amusement or disgust is unclear. This isn't beer in the way you know it. This is a fermented grain concoction that's been described by one archaeologist as barely drinkable, unless you hate yourself slightly less than you hate thirst. But hey, small doses dull the cold and calm the nerves. Big doses make you see double and miss the bear sneaking up behind you. A quirky fact? Some northern tribes used to flavor their ale with tree bark and mushroom spores, not for taste, but for mild hallucinations. These vision brews were thought to bring warrior dreams, ancestor messages, or, in one awkward case, a belief that the moon was chasing you with a spear. Back near the fire, the elders are swapping stories while licking grease from their fingers. A pig leg, more bone than meat, has been rotating over the coals for hours. When it finally falls apart, it's mostly fat, tendon, and ash. But it's meat. And meat means morale. You get a sliver, and it melts in your mouth like oily snow. Someone claps you on the shoulder. Might be praise, might be indigestion. Either way, your hands are warmer now. Someone starts singing, not a song like we'd recognize. More like a droning chant, half-hummed, half-growled, with irregular rhythm and too many consonants. But it carries. It echoes off the trees. It seeps into your boots and makes your spine vibrate. That's another thing out here. Songs aren't just for fun. They're records, instructions, warnings. Sometimes they tell you how to skin a deer or where the dangerous ice begins in spring. Sometimes they tell you what happened when that one cousin touched a thunderstone and forgot how to blink. One mainstream historical note. Many barbarian societies had oral traditions so strong, songs and poems preserved laws, lineages, and myths without ever touching parchment. Memory wasn't a skill, it was a survival mechanism. Miss one verse, and your whole clan might forget who owned which goat last winter. There's a moment of silence now. Just the fire crackling, the wind sighs. You lean back on your elbows, belly slightly full, head slightly fuzzy from the ale. And for once, you're not freezing. That's success, right? In a place where luxuries are rare and comfort's a seasonal visitor, warmth after sundown is about as good as it gets. Of course, there's still the matter of sleeping. Your bed is a mat of pine needles, straw, and flattened wool. Your blanket? A hide that still smells like whatever animal once wore it, with maybe a hint of something worse. You've tried fluffing it. You've tried folding it. It remains stubbornly lumpy and vaguely damp. You settle in anyway, curling up near the edge of the firelight. A few feet away, someone's already snoring. Loudly. It sounds like a dying bear gargling soup. No one seems to mind. You shift your position, trying to find that one magic angle where the rock under your hip feels less like a rock. It eludes you. You sigh. The woman in the fox hat glances at you and tosses over a scrap of extra fur. You nod. That's the closest thing to good night you're getting. There's a soft thud as someone adds more wood to the fire. Sparks fly upward. The night deepens. You hear an owl hoot in the distance, and something rustles in the underbrush beyond camp. Everyone ignores it. If it's dangerous, you'll hear the screaming. If it's not, well, too cold to care, the ale settles in your veins. Your eyelids drift lower. You listen to the sounds around you: crackling fire, occasional coughs, the sleepy shuffle of a goat, and feel your muscles finally start to release their grip. Historians still argue whether communal meals in these camps were more about bonding or resource control. Was it about trust or simply keeping track of who ate too much marrow? You don't know. You're too full, too tired, too warm to think much deeper. You breathe out slowly, and your breath drifts like fog into the night. Your feet are cold again. Not surprising. They've betrayed you every night so far. Even with that double layer of wool and fur, it's like your toes hold a personal grudge against comfort. You shift in your pine needle bed, curling tighter, trying to trap some warmth between your knees. It helps, slightly. Overhead, the sky is a dark dome pricked with lazy stars. The moon isn't visible tonight, probably hiding behind cloud fuzz like a shy cousin who hates family gatherings. You exhale, watch your breath bloom and fade, and then, because there's nothing else to do, you start thinking about tomorrow that you're not sure what it will bring. A hunt? A raid? Repairs to the goat fence that keeps pretending it's not falling apart? The camp's rhythm is familiar now, but never predictable. Sometimes it's all quiet whittling and stew. Other times, it's shouted orders and running feet. You've learned not to get attached to plans that a few feet away, someone shifts and mutters in their sleep. The snorer has gone mercifully quiet, replaced by the crackle of cooling fire and a soft rustle of fur. A gentle wind brushes your face like a tired hand. It carries the scent of smoke, pine, and something else: sweat, charred fat. It's hard to tell anymore. The smells of camp have nested in your clothes, in your hair, in your bones. You reach down and tighten the lacing on your left boot. It's a good one, made from thick hide, lined with fur, and patched 3 times in places you try not to think about. Still, it's better than going barefoot. A lot better. There's a story going around about a man who tried to tough it out one winter with no boots. By spring, his toes were black and his sense of humor gone completely. Another tale has it that wrapping your feet in wolf fur helps ward off frost spirits. The logic is unclear. Possibly the spirits respect wolves, or maybe they just dislike competition. Either way, the elders swear by it. You once saw someone dip their socks in warm fat before putting them on. Not pleasant. But again, survival trumps fashion. A mainstream historical fact? Archaeological digs in colder regions show evidence that many early tribes engineered footwear far more advanced than we often assume. They used multiple layers: leather, moss, fur, even straw, to insulate and wick moisture. Think of it as the Barbarian prototype of Gore-Tex, minus the branding and slightly more rodent-based. You sit up slightly, propping yourself on an elbow. The fire's glow still touches the nearest tree trunks, painting their rough bark in gold and black stripes. Beyond that, it's pure shadow. And silence. Well, almost silence. Someone nearby is whispering. You glance over, see 2 young warriors, barely old enough to grow patchy beards, talking quietly under a shared hide. They're trading guesses about tomorrow's movement. One says the chieftain's waiting for clear skies. The other says it's a surprise raid, just like last time. You roll your eyes in the dark. Last time, the surprise involved 3 days of sitting in wet grass while someone forgot the signal horn. Still, the whispers drift like smoke. Words you're not meant to hear, but can't help absorbing. You catch phrases: old border, watchers in the hills, and the ever-mysterious "someone saw torches." No one ever explains whose torches, or whether they were even real. But in a world without maps or cell towers, rumor is both entertainment and strategy. A quirky tidbit? Some tribes believe that firelight could attract or repel danger, depending on how it was arranged. A tight circle of flames meant protection. Scattered embers suggested openness, a challenge to spirits or strangers. Once, a wandering shaman spent an entire night rearranging logs to confuse the forest. The fire never quite recovered. You lie back down, tucking your hands under your armpits for warmth. You try not to think about the raid, or the frost, or the fact that your pillow is a bundled cloak that smells like something once bled on it. Instead, you think of shields. Yours is propped against a log, half covered in snow. It's not round like in the stories, but a bit oval, with one edge chipped from when you dropped it during that training session with the guy who yells a lot. Still, it does its job. Mostly. It's made of wood layered with hide, bound with sinew, and reinforced with an iron boss in the center. You polish it occasionally, when no one's looking. Some warriors decorate theirs with patterns, spirals, wolves, stars. Others scratch and marks for kills, for family, or just to look busy. Yours is plain, for now. You're still deciding. Something tasteful. Maybe a goat with a sword. You smile at that. Then frown, because your breath hits your nose and instantly chills it. You shift again, pull the fur tighter over your head, and close your eyes. Historians still argue whether barbarian shields were more ceremonial than practical. Some believe they were used in specific rites, passed down, hung above sleeping spots, or buried with their owners as symbols of identity. Others think they were just big wooden targets. Both may be right. A soft clatter wakes you again. Someone adjusting their bedroll, dropping a ladle, or sneezing dramatically into the dark. You groan quietly. Sleep is a slippery thing here. Always interrupted. Always half shallow, but you doze. Then wake. Then doze again. At one point, you dream that your boots are filled with honey and ants. You wake up sweating. There's no honey, no ants, just cold feet and a slightly damp sock. Eventually, the night finds its rhythm. The wind dies down. The fire becomes red coals. Even the goat stops muttering to itself. You nestle deeper into your fur, your fingers curled into fists, your knees to your chest. You think about tomorrow. You think about shields and raids and whether you'll ever get the smell of pine smoke out of your ears. And then, you stop thinking. The frost creeps in again, but this time, it feels gentler. Familiar that you're not comfortable, exactly. But you're not miserable either. That, in this world, counts as rest. You wake to whispers and the soft snap of a twig breaking beneath someone's boot. It's still dark, moonless, star-pricked, and quiet except for the faint stirrings of camp life returning. One of the elders, wrapped in 3 cloaks and a beard long enough to tangle in soup, is already hunched near the fire pit, coaxing yesterday's coals back to life with patient puffs and dry moss. You stretch, groan quietly, and brush away the layer of frost that's crept into the folds of your blanket. The fire's low, but there's just enough light to see silhouettes moving through the morning haze. No loud greetings. No breakfast bell, just grunts, nods, and the occasional scrape of a blade against a whetstone. You notice 2 women sitting near the fire, plucking the last feathers from a bird that may, or may not, have volunteered to become stew. Beside them, a pot boils sluggishly, emitting a smell that could be wild herbs or slightly overcooked feet. You're not in a rush to find out, and then it starts, the quiet stories. You shuffle over, bowl in hand, and settle next to the others. There's a rhythm to this part of the morning. Muted clatter, steaming bowls, and slow, winding conversation that slips between myth and memory, so casually you can't always tell where one ends and the other begins. Do you remember the one with the tree that screamed? Someone asks. Oh, that wasn't a tree. That was my cousin. He stepped on a snake. Laughter. Light, low, and short. Even humor here is economical. Another voice chimes in. Older, wheezier. Nah, the tree screamed. It was cursed. Grows upside down now. Roots in the air. Still out there, they say. You glance around, but no one seems eager to argue. Truth is a flexible thing in barbarian storytelling, not a mainstream historical fact. In many tribal societies across Eurasia, oral storytelling wasn't confined to nights around the fire. Mornings like these, drowsy, intimate, were just as important for transmitting legends, family histories, and cultural codes. It was social glue boiled down into digestible chunks, usually alongside breakfast that a child pipes up. Tell the one about the giant boar. You brace yourself. This one again. A lanky man with a missing eyebrow raises a finger dramatically. It wasn't just any boar. It had tusks made of stone. Took down 4 hunters before it disappeared into the lake. And if you listen at night, he leans closer. You can hear it sharpening those tusks on the rocks. The child's eyes go wide. The adults smirk. You take a bite of your porridge, or whatever this lumpy, gray sludge is, and try not to gag. It's warm, at least. And there are unidentifiable crunchy bits that might be toasted grain, or just dirt. Another story flows up from the firelight. This one's older, about a warrior who challenged a Roman for his helmet, then ended up with 3 fingers and no memory of the fight. No one knows if it's true, but everyone has a version. You find yourself smiling despite your aching back. Quirky tidbit? Some northern barbarian clans had unofficial memory keepers, not priests, not elders, just people with unusually good recall who were trusted to remember important stuff, like where the sacred tree stood or which river had angry fish gods. If someone forgot a detail, they'd say, "Ask the one with the ears." Why ears? No one knows. You sip from your bowl, noticing the fire has grown brighter. A few rays of early sun slash through the trees, catching on the edges of iron spearheads and morning frost. You feel the warmth on your cheek and shift closer to it, enjoying the contrast against the still frozen tips of your fingers. And then someone clears their throat. A big man with arms like tree trunks and a voice like gravel. What about the ghosts? There's a pause. Everyone waits. You mean the ones from the caves? Someone says, half joking. No, the ones in the wind. You hear them when you're walking alone, when the snow's falling sideways. A few heads nod. Not an agreement, just acknowledgement. It's the kind of statement you don't confirm, but also don't challenge. Not unless you want to test your luck. Historians still argue whether these ghost stories stemmed from cultural trauma, metaphorical fear of winter, or simply a very effective way to keep children from wandering off. The line between cautionary tale and bedtime horror story is thin and often covered in bare fur. You feel a breeze tug at your collar. Whether it's just weather or something else, no one here seems eager to say out loud. The stories wind on. Someone tells one about a deer that walked upright, wearing a man's face. Another shares a tale of a woman who became a falcon, flew over the Roman wall, and brought back a silver dagger. None of it is true, and yet, somehow, all of it is. Barbarian gossip, you realize, isn't about facts. It's about flavor, mystery, connection, a shared acknowledgement that this life is too unpredictable to be boring, too hard to be simple, and too quiet not to fill with stories. The morning passes slowly. Someone adds fresh wood to the fire. Someone else starts restringing a bough, muttering curses at a stubborn knot. A few teens chase a goat into a tree stump. Yes, into. You watch with fascination as they try to convince it to come out. The goat, clearly the smartest one present, refuses. You stretch, stand, and dust off your cloak. Your legs are stiff, your shoulders sore, and your brain slightly numbed from too much fermented oat talk. But you're warm, federal, and weirdly at peace. You glance at the others still huddled around the fire. Some are carving, some are laughing softly, and one is using a dull spoon to scratch a drawing into the dirt. A crude face, maybe, or a horse. Hard to tell. And there it is again, that strange sense of calm. Not comfort exactly, but presence. You're here. You're part of this strange, smoky, frostbitten family. If only for now. A story ends. Silence returns. You listen to the wind threading through branches, carrying old words and wood smoke with it. That you're no longer just a visitor, that you're part of the gossip now. You're crouched by the fire, scraping the last of the porridge from your bowl with a stick, when someone nudges your shoulder and nods upward. You glance at the sky. The clouds have peeled back just enough to show the stars again, stretched wide across the heavens like someone dropped a sack of glitter over the world. One of the elders points at a bright cluster. That's the spear of old Borak, he says. If you see it point straight down, get your boots, snow's coming. You squint. The spear is just Orion, or something like it, slightly crooked, half hidden behind a strip of drifting cloud. But here, out where there are no lanterns, no streetlights, and no TikTok notifications, the stars feel heavier. They don't twinkle. They watched out. A younger voice chimes in. And that one, with the 3 dots? That's the lost horse. Lost goat, someone else mutters. He never listened. You learn that everyone in this camp has their own version of the sky. The stars are ancestors, or enemies, or messages. Some are warnings, others are promises. You'd roll your eyes if it didn't feel weirdly practical. When you don't have calendars or radar, the sky becomes your journal, your to-do list, your ominous roommate. You wander a little from the fire. Not far, just enough to feel the cold bite again. The snow crunches softly underfoot. Your breath fogs. In the distance, beyond the camp's edge, the trees stand like old, silent guards. And beyond them, someone says, are the hills and the shields. That someone's leaning against a boulder nearby, polishing a dented round shield with a handful of damp moss. It squeaks faintly, like it's annoyed. The warrior grunts at it, flips it over, and starts again. You catch a glimpse of a faded pattern, spirals curling in toward a wolf's head. Old paint, long worn. You join them wordlessly. The shield's edge is nicked, and there's a small hole near the rim where it looks like an arrow might have once lived. You ask what happened. Horse slipped, he says. Then adds, also Romans. You nod solemnly, even though you're not sure which part is more likely. Barbarian shields weren't just slabs of wood. They were expressions of identity. Some were practical, simple, light, reinforced with hide. Others were ceremonial, painted with symbols or wrapped in runes no one could quite read anymore. And some were just scavenged, captured in skirmishes, inherited from ancestors, or found half buried in the mud near the old stone road. A mainstream historical fact. While often dismissed as crude, many early European shields showed surprising sophistication. Some were layered with different woods for flexibility and strength, like an ancient version of plywood, and reinforced with metal bosses for absorbing spear strikes. A few even had straps designed to shift the load mid-fight, an innovation not widely replicated until centuries later. The shield polisher beside you taps the wood and says, "This one's stubborn. Doesn't like to fight unless it's raining." You resist the urge to ask if he's joking, because honestly, it's hard to tell. A few others nearby are comparing gear. One's sanding a spear shaft with a rock, another's tying a bundle of javelins with what looks suspiciously like goat gut. There's a casual, practiced pace to it all. No rushing, no panic, just maintenance. And then someone casually mentions the horse theft. It starts quietly. A side comment. "It wasn't my fault," says the man with the wolf tattoo on his neck. "He said take a horse, not his horse." You freeze mid-sip from your wooden flask. Oh, it's this story. Everyone within earshot shifts slightly, smiles twitching at the corners. No one interrupts. "This is a favorite, so I saddle the beast," the wolf tattoo man says, "and it looks at me like I owe it something. Like maybe I insulted its mother." "You did insult its mother," someone interjects. "That was a different horse." Laughter ripples out. Even the usually stone-faced elder gives a dry snort. The tale continues. How the horse ran backward, how it refused to cross the river, how it supposedly spoke Latin under its breath. You're not sure what's real anymore. Doesn't matter. The mood has lightened. Quirky tidbit? Among certain tribes, horses were believed to be part divine. Dreaming of a white horse was said to signal an impending birth or a sudden battle, depending on whether it was smiling. A laughing horse? You were doomed. Period. As the story winds down, you find yourself holding your own shield. It's heavier than it looks. The hide binding squeaks when you twist it. The wood smells faintly of salt and sweat. You turn it over in your lap, run your fingers along a scratch that could have been made yesterday or 20 winters ago. You wonder about its previous owner. Were they fast? Clever? Did they paint it? Or just inherit it like a coat that was never quite their size? Did it save their life once? Or did it fail them when it mattered most? Historians still argue whether shields were buried with their warriors as symbols of status or simply to prevent the next poor soul from inheriting bad luck. Either way, this one is yours now. And that means something. You stand. The camp has grown quieter again. People are settling down. Some are already asleep, curled around coals and dreams. Others sit alone, sharpening thoughts. You walk to the edge of the camp and look up. The stars have shifted, or maybe you've just noticed them differently. The lost goat, if it is a goat, has wandered west. The spear of old Boric leans slightly more upright. Maybe snow is coming. Maybe not. You adjust your cloak and listen to the night. Cracking wood, wind sighing in the trees, someone hiccuping into their blanket. You run a thumb along the rim of your shield, and you wait. Morning comes later than it should, and with less enthusiasm than usual. The sky is the dull color of wet wool, and the air hangs thick and damp, like someone tried to boil a storm but gave up halfway. You open your eyes to find the fire low, your fingers stiff, and a small pile of snow building up in the crook of your elbow. Great. It's snowing sideways again. You rise slowly, your body protesting each movement like an old door hinge. Your breath fogs before your face, and you catch a few flakes on your eyelashes before wiping them away with a grunt. Around you, the camp is sluggish, draped in a blanket of pale silence. Even the goats seem grumpy, their usual morning yells replaced by muted stares and soft stamping. This kind of snow doesn't fall, it sneaks in. It coats everything in a silent film, seeps into seams and socks, and turns the ground into a half-solid slush of betrayal. You trudge to the fire pit, but it's barely breathing now. The coals are sulking under a thin layer of ash, too damp to revive easily. You poke at it with a stick like you're waking a grumpy bear, and no one's talking. Everyone's just enduring. A few others join you near the fire, shoulders hunched, eyes puffy. One woman is drying her hands over the heatless coals, muttering that the snow came early this year. A man coughs once, spits into the slush, then hunches deeper into his cloak. You hear someone sneeze violently from a hut made of bark and hide, followed by a muffled, "I'm fine." You grab a few sticks from the dwindling woodpile and throw them into the pit. They hiss angrily, but eventually catch. Barely. It's going to be one of those days. Still, snow or not, life continues. There's a fence to repair, the one that always collapses during the first wet snow. A few spears need rewrapping. One unlucky soul is already out chasing the goats again, his legs up to his knees in mud and regret. You watch as he slips, curses, and tries to pretend it didn't happen. You help where you can. Patching hides, hauling firewood, stamping down snow near the sleeping shelters. You even manage to catch a few moments of mild satisfaction when you straighten a leaning wall of stacked kindling. It doesn't fall over this time. You nod to yourself like a professional. A mainstream historical fact. Snow didn't just complicate barbarian survival, it dictated it. Many tribes across northern and central Europe relied on communal stockpiling before the cold hit. Root vegetables were buried deep to avoid freezing, grain stored in sealed clay pots, and meat was either dried or smoked until it resembled angry leather. When the snow arrived too soon or too strong, it could ruin entire seasonal plans. But out here, you don't have a root cellar or a granary. You have instincts, strong legs, and a communal sense of we'll figure it out or die trying. You glance up and spot two warriors inspecting a nearby tree. The bark has split slightly in the cold. They tap it with the butts of their spears and nod solemnly, as if it's just shared a sad story. One of them turns to you and mutters, "Good trees scream before they fall." Then he walks off that you're not sure what to do with that information. You file it under unexpected tree behavior and move on. A quirky tidbit? Some clans believe that if you left your boots facing the wrong direction outside your shelter, the storm spirits would take offense and reverse your luck for the week. One winter, a man kept tripping every day until someone realized his boots were pointed west. They turned them around, and he immediately fell into a stream. So, maybe it was just him. As the snow thickens, you notice the sound of camp change. It softens. The usual clanging and thudding dulls under the powdery layer blanketing everything. Even footsteps make quieter complaints. You help a child dig out a slumped tent, and they reward you by throwing a snowball directly into your ear. You retaliate with a very mature handful of slush down their collar. They squeal. You both laugh. It's the first warm moment of the day. Later, back at the fire, the camp begins to slowly stir back to its familiar rhythm. Someone manages to get soup boiling. Not the delicious kind, the functional kind. A greasy broth with hints of something rooty and possibly accidental squirrel. You slurp it gratefully anyway. One of the old men, wrapped in fur and bitterness, begins a story. There was a man once, he begins, who thought he could outrun winter. Built himself a cart, tied 3 goats to it, and rode south every time the air smelled sharp. You raise an eyebrow. They say he made it as far as the riverlands. 8 oranges. Found a woman with red hair and 10 brothers. But then he heard the wind calling his name. So he turned around and came back. Said the goats were getting homesick. No one interrupts. It's a quiet tale. Not heroic. Not tragic. Just inevitable. Historians still argue whether the migratory instincts of some northern tribes were based on animal movement, superstition, or simply blind trial and error. Some groups followed birds. Others followed the moss on trees. One even claimed they navigated by the smell of pine bark after rain. As the sky begins to dim. Already, again, you feel that familiar ache in your shoulders. You're tired in the bones now, not just from work, but from the weather itself. Cold has a weight, and you've been carrying it all day. You slip off to the edge of camp, hoping for a moment alone. The snow's deeper now, halfway up your boots. You walk until the trees close around you like a whisper. The sounds of camp fade behind. In front of you, the forest stands still. Even the birds have gone quiet. You breathe deeply. The cold bites, but it's clean, sharp, real. You look up and see flakes drifting lazily from the branches, catching in your eyelashes again. There's something peaceful about this moment. It doesn't last, of course. A branch dumps a load of snow down your collar, and you stumble backward, swearing softly into the trees. But for those few seconds, you felt it, stillness. You return to camp, colder but lighter somehow. The fire's brighter now. Someone's singing again, low and slow. The kind of song you don't know the words to, but understand anyway. You sit. Someone hands you a bit of bread. You nod. Tomorrow, maybe the snow will stop. Or maybe it won't. Either way, you'll be here. The storm didn't stop. By morning. The snow has gone from a quiet inconvenience to a full-fledged personality. It doesn't just fall now. It howls, it hisses, it throws itself sideways like an angry spirit with too many grudges and too much time. The wind pushes against your shelter like it's testing the stitching. Something creaks. Something else gives a loud pop. You hope it wasn't structural. You open your eyes to the dim, gray-lit interior of your hut. The roof is sagging slightly under the weight of fresh snow, and a small pile has blown in through the cracks. Your left boot is half buried in it. Cold soaks into your bones before you even sit up. You contemplate lying back down and pretending you're already dead. Instead, you brace yourself and rise, swaddling in every layer of fur and hide you can find. You look like a walking pile of damp laundry, but you feel slightly less doomed. Outside, the camp is ghost-like. Everything is white. The huts, the trees, the goats, who are now huddled together under an overturned sled like furry little conspirators. People move slowly, heads down, shoulders hunched, each step a negotiation between purpose and frostbite. Visibility is poor. Your eyelashes freeze together when you blink. But the fire's still burning, that's the rule here. Keep the fire going, or everything else goes too. You stumble toward it, hands tucked deep under your armpits, and are greeted by the sight of two miserable figures trying to light a fresh bundle of wet wood. The smoke is aggressive. It chokes sideways, wraps around your face, and settles in your lungs like a stubborn raccoon. You cough, swear, and immediately regret opening your mouth. One of the figures glances at you, snow clinging to their beard like icing. Warm enough for you. You respond with the universal barbarian gesture for "I hate this," which involves rolling your eyes and blowing out through your nose like a tired ox. A mainstream historical fact. In colder climates, communities would often maintain at least one permanent flame, usually in the central hearth, that was kept alive day and night through the worst months. If it ever went out, relighting it could become a major ritual, involving friction fires, sacred trees, and at least one angry elder yelling at the sky. Here, though, it's mostly just swearing and relighting with a bit of last night's ember tucked into moss. Someone hands you a small leather pouch. Inside, a hard chunk of something sweet and sharp. Dried berries mixed with honey and rendered fat. Trail food, barbarian style. You chew it thoughtfully. It tastes better than it looks, which isn't saying much. Then comes the big question. Should we dig out the storage pit? Everyone pauses. The storage pit is where the tribe keeps what little surplus exists. Smoked fish, dried roots, salted goat parts, maybe even a secret jar of something alcoholic. It's buried deep and covered with branches and snow to keep it hidden from both animals and human appetites. Opening it too early is a bit like admitting you've already lost the winter. Still, bellies are emptier than they should be, and the cold's only growing teeth. I'll help, you say, before your better judgment can intervene. At a quirky tidbit? Some tribes mark their storage pits with carved totems or bones, not to warn off animals, but to confuse rival clans or curious children. One pit was famously guarded by a goat skull wearing beads and a painted frown. When someone finally dug it up, all they found was frozen mud and a single wooden spoon. The digging is hard. The snow is deep and dense, and beneath it is a layer of crusted ice like ancient regret. You use sticks, hands, and eventually your own shield to scoop and break the surface. It takes hours, or maybe it just feels that way. Your fingers stop feeling like fingers. Your knees ache with every crouch. But finally, the branches appear. Someone pries them back. Beneath is a wooden lid. It's frosted shut. You hammer at it with the heel of your boot until it creaks open. Cold, dry air escapes like a long sigh. Inside, victory. A few wrapped bundles. A couple of clay jars. A hardened block of something meat-shaped. Not a feast, but enough. You carry your prize back to the fire like hunters returning with a mammoth. A small cheer rises as the bundles are unwrapped. The dried goat is shaved thin and tossed into the pot. The jars are opened cautiously. One contains pickled roots, the other a strange, gritty paste that smells like old onions and victory. And then, oh, joy! a hidden pouch of something black and sticky. Fruit mush, someone whispers with reverence. Possibly plum, possibly ratberry. Doesn't matter. It's sweet. It's rare. It's sacred. You pass around spoonfuls. Eyes light up. Tongues are burned. One man drops his and weeps quietly. Historians still argue whether winter food preservation was driven more by necessity or ritual. Many pits and jars were found deliberately sealed with symbols or animal parts, suggesting not just survival, but offerings. Was it storage or sacrifice? Faith or function? The lines blur. With full bellies and mildly scorched tongues, the mood lightens. Someone starts carving into the thawing goat scrap, making it into something resembling a puppet. It's horrible. It's glorious. People laugh for the first time all day. Later, as the snow eases a little, you gather more branches for the fire. You slip once, fall face first into a drift, and emerge with snow in places snow has no business being. A child sees, laughs so hard they fall too, and suddenly it's a contest of who can fall most dramatically. Even in this misery, you find silliness. That's how the camp survives, not just through strength or meat, but through mockery and moments of absurd joy. You collapse near the fire again, steaming, exhausted, and slightly bruised. The storm's still not done, but you are. You watch the snow settle on the world like a worn-out blanket. The fire crackles softly, the soup burbles, and the pickled roots are, somehow, already gone. You close your eyes and let the warmth wash over you. For now, night again, and the snow's taken a break. Not because it's generous, just tired, maybe. The wind has died down to a whisper, and the world feels wrapped in thick felt. Everything's muffled, soft, still dangerous, sure, but beautiful in that this could kill you kind of way. You sit by the fire, wrapped in your blanket and your thoughts, watching the smoke rise in slow, lazy spirals. Someone's added pine to the flames, so now everything smells like a burned forest and vague cleanliness. You welcome it. Anything's better than the constant soup-goat breath combo you've been marinating in all day. The camp is quiet. Most people have curled up early, spent from digging, hauling, slipping, cursing. But a few of you remain around the fire like loyal coals, too stubborn to sleep, too tired to talk. Just watching, just breathing. Then, someone stirs that it's the storyteller. Every camp has one. The one who collects memories like firewood and breaks them out only when the night is calm enough to hold them. He clears his throat, and everyone nearby straightens up. Not obviously, but enough to say, we're listening. That he doesn't begin with a name or a date, just a soft. There was a man once walked alone through the ice fields. Oh, this one. You lean in, letting the rhythm carry you. He wore no armor, carried no sword, just a sack of bones tied with rope. Said he was feeding the dead. Feeding the dead. You've heard the story before. Fragments whispered during long walks or carved roughly into the back of a bone comb. It changes every time, and no one ever finishes it quite the same way. But here it is again, being rebuilt with smoke and silence. The storyteller describes how the man walked for days through blizzards, whispering names into the wind. Some versions say he was seeking his ancestors. Others say he was a ghost himself, unaware of his own death. Some claim the bones weren't his at all, that he'd stolen them from a sacred pit and was cursed to wander until he returned them, and one interrupts. No one asks questions. A mainstream historical fact? In many early Northern European cultures, bones were more than leftovers. They were vessels. Memory lived in them. Power, too. Some warriors carried finger bones of their fathers into battle. Others placed skulls at the borders of their villages, not as trophies, but as warnings to spirits or perhaps invitations to watch. The fire snaps, and someone jumps. A log collapses inward, sending a short burst of sparks skyward. They vanish quickly, caught by the darkness. Back to the story. Eventually, the man reaches the mountain that remembers, an ice-covered peak that no one's quite located. The though everyone swears it exists. He lays the bones in a ring, says the last name out loud, and waits. And then, well, historians still argue what the ending means. Some say the wind lifted the bones and turned them into stars. Others say the mountain swallowed him whole. One even claims the man became a tree, gnarled and frozen, with bark shaped like faces. The storyteller never finishes the tale the same way twice. Tonight, he simply says he was never seen again. But sometimes, people hear singing in the snow. He lets the silence stretch. No one claps. No one needs to. The story has done its job. It's filled the space where fear usually lives and left it with something softer. You shift, pulling your fur tighter. The stars have come back out. Hard, clear dots against the ink-black sky. You trace familiar constellations. There's the crooked antler. There's the laughing boar. You imagine the bone carrier walking just beneath them, his sack swinging gently, his voice barely audible over the wind. That a quirky tidbit? Some tribes believe that stories had to be told under certain skies. If you told a winter tale in summer, the spirits would mix up the seasons. Once, an overeager boy told a storm story during harvest, and it rained for 3 days straight. Coincidence? Maybe. But they made him sleep outside that week. Back by the fire, the storyteller nods once and leans back. His job's done. Someone adds a new log. The flames flare, then settle. A woman hums quietly, a tune without words, like a lullaby for the earth itself. You glance at the others. One's already asleep, mouth slightly open, fingers still wrapped around a bowl. Another is sharpening a blade that probably doesn't need sharpening, just for something to do. A third is staring into the fire like it holds all the answers. And maybe it does, if you stare long enough. You ease back, lying on your side, pulling your blanket up to your chin. The ground is still cold, still uneven, but your body's used to it now. You tuck your hands under your neck and close your eyes. The story lingers in your mind. The walking man, the mountain, the names whispered into wind. You think, what would I carry in my sack of bones? You hope it wouldn't be regrets, or debts, or the leftover anger of someone else's war. You hope it would be something good, something worth delivering to the mountain. You feel the weight of the stars above you, watching, or maybe just waiting. Eye in the distance. You hear an owl. Or maybe it's a voice. Hard to tell, this deep into the cold. Either way, you don't move. You let the sounds blend. You let the fire dim. You let the story settle into your chest like a warm stone. Sleep comes slow tonight. But it comes, and in your dream, you're walking across snow. Alone, singing, and someone, somewhere, is listening. You wake with a start. Not to danger, not to shouts or fire or goat stampedes, but to quiet. A deep, thorough, suspicious kind of quiet. Even the fire isn't crackling. Just low red coals like the last thoughts of a sleeping mind. You sit up slowly, listening, feeling. No wind. No murmuring voices. No coughing from the older tent near the edge of camp. It's as though the world decided to pause for a breath and forgot to unpause. You blink against the faint gray light seeping in from behind the trees. Dawn, maybe. Or at least the idea of dawn. You stretch your arms. Everything hurts. But a familiar hurt. The kind that means you're still functioning. Still here. You rise and step outside. And the world is white. Snow, yes. But not just snow, stillness. Every branch is coated, every path buried. Even the camp's usual mess, the tools, the footprints, the bundled gear, is hidden beneath smooth, pristine powder. It's like someone hit reset on the land. And there, in the center, someone's already made a snowman. Well, snowman is generous. It's lopsided. One arm is a soup ladle, and the other is definitely a bone. The face is a smear of charcoal, and there's a single goose feather stuck in the top like a crown. It's hideous. It's perfect, you laugh. Out loud. The sound seems to surprise the trees that you're not alone for long. Soon, others emerge, sleep-rumpled, blinking, wrapped in cloaks and curiosity. They stare at the snowman. Someone snorts. Someone else shakes their head and mutters, "He needs pants." You get the feeling today will not be serious, which is a rare, beautiful gift in a life where even breakfast can feel like combat. Soon, more figures are trudging around the camp, clearing paths with sticks, boots, and bad attitudes. Someone uncovers the goat pen again. The goats give a collective sigh, like they've been deeply inconvenienced by nature. One promptly escapes and makes it 5 feet before deciding it's too cold and returns. Then the idea spreads. Games that a few younger warriors start shaping snowballs. At first, it's casual. Just a flick here, a toss there. But soon it escalates into a full battle. Shields are used. War cries are howled. A man takes a snowball directly to the ear and acts like he's been wounded in battle. You dodge one. Then another. Then you get cocky, laugh, and take a third directly to the face. The snow is powdery, but with just enough ice to make you reconsider your choices. A mainstream historical fact. While we often imagine ancient warrior tribes as grim and brutal 24/7, archaeology and oral traditions reveal that leisure, yes, even fun, had its place. Some groups held winter festivals involving mock battles, sled races, and snow sculpture contests. The Roman historian Tacitus even noted that northern tribes would sometimes engage in ritual play fights to prepare for real ones. You build your own snow shield, basically a lump of packed snow you hide behind, and retaliate with what might be the best throw of your life. It hits a burly man square in the chest. He pauses, smiles, then lifts a massive armful of snow and dumps it on your head. You fall backward into the drift, laughing so hard you can't breathe. Eventually, peace returns. The snow war ends in a truce, sealed with bread and a shared pot of heated berries. Everyone is soaked, freezing, and weirdly cheerful. A woman leans over and asks, "Do you want to see the tracks?" You nod, of course. Curiosity wins over warmth every time. She leads you to the tree line, where the snow is less trampled. There, clear and fresh, are tracks. Small ones. Deer, maybe. Or something pretending to be a deer. The prints are light but fast, cutting a strange curve through the snow, almost as if the creature danced its way through. She crouches and points to the spacing. Too narrow for deer. Too straight for fox. You ask her what she thinks. She shrugs. Could be anything. Then adds, could be him. You pause. Him doesn't need a name. Every camp has a winter legend. A shadow that travels alone. Sometimes a protector. Sometimes a thief. Sometimes just a question in the shape of a man. No one agrees on the details, and no one wants to meet him. A quirky tidbit? In some regions, people would leave small offerings in the snow during the first deep silence of winter. Bread crusts, carved tokens, old bits of iron. Not for gods, not even for animals. Just to show respect. To acknowledge that something walked the forests when all else slept. A few communities even claim to see prints that started or ended in midair. You both follow the trail for a while, then lose it near a ridge. The snow gets deeper, heavier. You shiver and suggest heading back. She agrees, but not before pressing her palm gently into the snow beside the last print, like saying hello or goodbye. Back at camp, the fire's been revived, and there's something bubbling in the pot that smells better than it should. Someone's playing a flute badly. It doesn't matter. The tune is light and awkward and alive. You warm your hands, exchange nods with the others, and sit down heavily on a stump that groans under your weight. A child walks by with a wooden plate, slips, and spills a hunk of meat in the snow. They look at it, shrug, and eat it anyway. No one flinches. Later, you stretch out near the coals, drowsy again. The snow outside the ring of firelight glows faintly, as if remembering the sun. The sky is low, but calm. You think about the tracks, about the snowman, about the quiet, and you wonder, if he really does walk the forests, this figure with no name and no need, what is he looking for? Probably not answers. Probably just something warm. You wake with a start. Not to danger, not to shouts or fire or goat stampedes, but to quiet, a deep, thorough, suspicious kind of quiet. Even the fire isn't crackling. Just low red coals like the last thoughts of a sleeping mind. You sit up slowly, listening, feeling. No wind. No murmuring voices. No coughing from the older tent near the edge of camp. It's as though the world decided to pause for a breath and forgot to unpause. You blink against the faint gray light seeping in from behind the trees. Dawn, maybe. Or at least the idea of dawn. You stretch your arms. Everything hurts. But a familiar hurt. The kind that means you're still functioning. Still here. You rise and step outside. And the world is white. Snow, yes. But not just snow, stillness. Every branch is coated, every path buried. Even the camp's usual mess, the tools, the footprints, the bundled gear, is hidden beneath smooth, pristine powder. It's like someone hit reset on the land. And there, in the center, someone's already made a snowman. Well, snowman is generous. It's lopsided. One arm is a soup ladle, and the other is definitely a bone. The face is a smear of charcoal, and there's a single goose feather stuck in the top like a crown. It's hideous. It's perfect, you laugh. Out loud. The sound seems to surprise the trees that you're not alone for long. Soon, others emerge, sleep-rumpled, blinking, wrapped in cloaks and curiosity. They stare at the snowman. Someone snorts. Someone else shakes their head and mutters, "He needs pants." You get the feeling today will not be serious, which is a rare, beautiful gift in a life where even breakfast can feel like combat. Soon, more figures are trudging around the camp, clearing paths with sticks, boots, and bad attitudes. Someone uncovers the goat pen again. The goats give a collective sigh, like they've been deeply inconvenienced by nature. One promptly escapes and makes it 5 feet before deciding it's too cold and returns. Then the idea spreads. Games that a few younger warriors start shaping snowballs. At first, it's casual. Just a flick here, a toss there. But soon it escalates into a full battle. Shields are used. War cries are howled. A man takes a snowball directly to the ear and acts like he's been wounded in battle. You dodge one. Then another. Then you get cocky, laugh, and take a third directly to the face. The snow is powdery, but with just enough ice to make you reconsider your choices. A mainstream historical fact. While we often imagine ancient warrior tribes as grim and brutal 24/7, archaeology and oral traditions reveal that leisure, yes, even fun, had its place. Some groups held winter festivals involving mock battles, sled races, and snow sculpture contests. The Roman historian Tacitus even noted that northern tribes would sometimes engage in ritual play fights to prepare for real ones. You build your own snow shield, basically a lump of packed snow you hide behind, and retaliate with what might be the best throw of your life. It hits a burly man square in the chest. He pauses, smiles, then lifts a massive armful of snow and dumps it on your head. You fall backward into the drift, laughing so hard you can't breathe. Eventually, peace returns. The snow war ends in a truce, sealed with bread and a shared pot of heated berries. Everyone is soaked, freezing, and weirdly cheerful. A woman leans over and asks, "Do you want to see the tracks?" You nod, of course. Curiosity wins over warmth every time. She leads you to the tree line, where the snow is less trampled. There, clear and fresh, are tracks. Small ones. Deer, maybe. Or something pretending to be a deer. The prints are light but fast, cutting a strange curve through the snow, almost as if the creature danced its way through. She crouches and points to the spacing. Too narrow for deer. Too straight for fox. You ask her what she thinks. She shrugs. Could be anything. Then adds, could be him. You pause. Him doesn't need a name. Every camp has a winter legend. A shadow that travels alone. Sometimes a protector. Sometimes a thief. sometimes just a question in the shape of a man. No one agrees on the details, and no one wants to meet him. A quirky tidbit? In some regions, people would leave small offerings in the snow during the first deep silence of winter: bread crusts, carved tokens, old bits of iron. Not for gods, not even for animals, just to show respect, to acknowledge that something walked the forests when all else slept. A few communities even claim to see prints that started or ended in midair. You both follow the trail for a while, then lose it near a ridge. The snow gets deeper, heavier. You shiver and suggest heading back. She agrees, but not before pressing her palm gently into the snow beside the last print, like saying hello or goodbye. Back at camp, the fire's been revived, and there's something bubbling in the pot that smells better than it should. Someone's playing a flute badly. It doesn't matter. The tune is light and awkward and alive. You warm your hands, exchange nods with the others, and sit down heavily on a stump that groans under your weight. A child walks by with a wooden plate, slips, and spills a hunk of meat in the snow. They look at it, shrug, and eat it anyway. No one flinches. Later, you stretch out near the coals, drowsy again. The snow outside the ring of firelight glows faintly, as if remembering the sun. The sky is low, but calm. You think about the tracks, about the snowman, about the quiet, and you wonder, if he really does walk the forests, this figure with no name and no need, what is he looking for? Probably not answers. Probably just something warm. The morning after the thaw feels like waking up in someone else's dream that everything's dripping, sliding, giving up. The snowbanks that stood like stubborn walls are now limp piles of slush. The icicles have retreated in disgrace. The frozen silence has been replaced by the world's messiest soundscape: squelching boots, groaning ropes, squeaking leather, the occasional fart from a goat who's had too many fermented roots. You step out and almost lose a boot to the mud. Not snow anymore, mud. Thick, wet, clinging with the enthusiasm of a toddler and the dignity of a collapsing roof. It gets into everything: your feet, your socks, your hopes. Still, there's movement now. Buzz. The camp is stretching after its long winter nap. Warriors are oiling blades. Weavers are untangling the disastrous yarn heap that someone, probably a goat, kicked over 2 moons ago. There's talk of hunting parties and trade runs. The kind of talk that says, we might survive another year, so let's start arguing again. You help someone unstick a cartwheel from a puddle the size of a minor lake. It sucks and squelches like it's swallowing treasure. You finally free it with a mighty heave that sends mud up your leg and into your ear. A nearby child claps. You bow dramatically and immediately slip on your own boot. So yes, you're filthy, but also oddly proud. A mainstream historical fact: mobility after winter was key to survival. Once the paths cleared, tribes would often send scouts or traders to neighboring communities, some friendly, some less so. They'd exchange tools, pelts, stories, and, inevitably, diseases. But those journeys also allowed fresh news, rare supplies, and alliances to circulate again. Movement meant life. Back at camp, there's a small debate about what to do first: mend the broken fences, re-roof the longhouse, or finally bury whatever is under the collapsed hay pile that smells vaguely like regret. A group votes for the hay pile. They bring long sticks, hold their noses, and poke carefully. You leave before you find out what happens. Some things are better left as mystery lore. You find yourself near the animal pens, where someone's brushing a shaggy horse who's clearly been through it. Tufts of winter fur drift off with each stroke like clouds of dusty ghosts. The horse eyes you, snorts, then sneezes directly onto your cloak. The groom chuckles. He likes you. Clearly, you say, wiping your face with a handful of grass and personal shame. This is when someone says the phrase that sends a ripple through the camp. The river's moving again. You all turn toward the edge of the trees. Sure enough, there it is, no longer locked in ice, no longer silent. The river is awake. Fast, noisy, brown with churned up earth and broken twigs, but moving. Alive. You walk closer, boots sinking slightly into the thawing earth. The closer you get, the louder it gets. Not a roar. Not yet. Just a confident gurgle. Like it's clearing its throat. The river meant fishing.it meant crossings.it meant change. A few people begin dragging out the old nets. Some patched, some moldy, all hopeful. You watch them lay the lines in the sun, weigh them down with stones, and whisper over them. Not prayers exactly, more like reminders. Bargains. One man spits into the river for luck. Another drops a coin in and winks. A third falls in entirely, and everyone agrees that he has now secured the best fortune of all. Humiliation. A quirky tidbit? Some tribes believed rivers had moods, and that you could speak to them by the angle of your shadow or the ripple of a skipped stone. If a stone bounced 3 times, you were welcome. If it sank immediately, you packed up and found another stream, or at least waited for a different day. In one region, it was customary to throw a sliver of iron into the first flowing water each year, just in case something hungry woke up with the thaw. Later, as the sun climbs and the mud deepens, the camp gathers around a small fire, not for warmth, but for news. One of the returning scouts is back. His cloak is filthy. His beard is full of burrs. His face is sunburnt in weird, blotchy patches. He looks like a man who's been arguing with rocks and lost. But he has stories. You lean in, chewing on a hunk of sour flatbread. As he begins, he tells of another tribe across the valley, survived the winter, barely. Lost half their herd, traded their last axes for dried apples and desperation. He speaks of strange footprints near the southern cliffs, two-toed, deep, and surrounded by scorched ground. Could be nothing, could be something. Then comes the real gem. There's a market forming, near the old Roman road. 2 days' walk. Everyone stills, trade, gossip, new boots, and possibly, if the gods are generous, fermented turnip liquor. Historians still argue whether early seasonal markets were planned in advance or formed spontaneously when enough desperate people happened to gather. Either way, they were more than places to swap pelts. They were reunions. They were show and tell. They were the closest thing to civilization the wilderness offered. Immediately, plans formed: who's going, who's staying, what can be spared to trade, what absolutely cannot leave the camp. Someone points at the last good blanket and says, "Not again." You volunteer for the market run before you know why. Maybe it's the promise of movement. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe you just want to walk somewhere that isn't made entirely of goat prints and old soup. Either way, you begin gathering what you'll need: a sling bag, a good knife, your least wet cloak, and your best lies, because trading isn't just barter. It's theater. You're not selling a lump of amber. You're selling the memory it contains. Not giving away firewood. Offering warmth carved from a sacred forest. You fall asleep that night already picturing the journey. You imagine the path, the stories, the deals. You don't imagine the blisters. Not yet. By the time the sun crawls up the next morning, you're already walking. The camp disappears behind you. Slowly at first, then suddenly, like fog swallowed it. You don't look back much. Not because you're brave, but because your boots are chewing up your ankles, and every step forward is a small act of war against yourself. Still, it feels good. Sort of. Okay, it hurts. But in that oddly satisfying, I'm doing something way, the others on the trade run walk at a steady clip. There's 5 of you. One's too talkative. One's too quiet. One hums constantly, but only half melodies that never resolve. The last one, the oldest, walks like the wind owes him something, and he's coming to collect. You fall into rhythm, eyes scanning the thawing land. The forest is different now. Still bare, still eerie, but less threatening. Like a grumpy dog that's stopped growling. Water drips from every branch. Patches of green peek out where snow has given up. Somewhere to the north, a raven yells about something extremely important and then immediately forgets what it was. You pass animal tracks. Some fresh, some frightening. A set of claw prints that start in the middle of the path and end nowhere. A strange, spiraled pattern etched into the frost, like a wheel made of teeth passed through. You all stop briefly, consider whether it's worth worrying about. Nope, says the old man, and so you keep walking. A mainstream historical fact. Long-distance trading routes in the post-Roman European wilderness weren't just for goods. They were information superhighways. Along those muddy paths came news of births, betrayals, new gods, weird foods, and occasional plagues. A well-timed rumor could be worth more than a fur pelt, and knowing what not to say could save your life. Midway through the second day, you reach the river crossing. It's wider now. Rowdy, brown with meltwater and attitude. No bridge, just a series of flat stones and a thick rope strung across from tree to tree. You watch the oldest cross first, slowly, balancing on each slick stone, one hand tied on the rope. He makes it, then the quiet one, then the humming one, then you. Midway across, you slip. Naturally, one leg plunges in, sock and pride instantly soaked. You dangle for a moment, clinging to the rope like a bewildered squirrel. The water laughs at you. The talkative one claps. You climb out, teeth chattering, boot full of what may or may not be river shrimp. But you're across. That counts. A few hours later, the wood's thin. The road begins, or what's left of it, a trail of stone teeth poking up from the mud. The remnants of an old Roman path, long abandoned, half swallowed by moss and memory. It snakes through the low hills like a scar, still faintly visible if you know how to look. Your group walks quieter now. Not because of danger, but reverence. People built this. Real people, with tools and sandals and slightly better grammar. And here you are, trudging along it centuries later with sore feet and jerky in your pocket. It's humbling, slightly annoying, too. You wonder if any of those old Roman engineers ever slipped in goat dung. Probably not. Probably had sandals with tiny golden wings. The sun begins to lower, and then, just as your legs are about to secede from your body, you hear it. Noise, laughter, arguing, clanking, a goat yelling in Spanish. And then, music. You crest the hill, and there it is, the market. It's not big, not beautiful, but it's alive, tense. Wagons, stalls made of sticks and wishes. Smoke curls up from half a dozen cook fires. Children dart between traders. Dogs argue over territory. A man is already drunk and singing about onions. It's everything you hoped it would be, and louder. You stop to take it in. The others surge forward, calling greetings to familiar faces. You linger, watch, then someone throws something at you. It lands at your feet, a small round object wrapped in cloth. You pick it up, unwrap an apple, fresh. Not perfect, a bit bruised, but red. You look up. A woman across the path winks at you. You raise the apple in thanks. She nods and vanishes into the crowd. A quirky tidbit? Some traders believed it was bad luck to sell the first item of the day, so they'd gift it to someone, often a stranger, often someone who looked new. Not generosity exactly, just ritual. And admit your luck was now, in motion. You bite the apple. It's sharp, sweet, a shock to the system. After months of boiled roots and dried meat, it feels like biting sunlight. You laugh, then dive into the crowd. Barter happens in a flurry. You trade 2 small furs for salt, a carved spoon for a tiny clay bottle of something that makes your lips go numb. Someone offers you a chicken for your boots. You decline. They counter with 2 chickens. You think about it. Around you, languages mix. Old tongue, Latin fragments, whistles. One guy communicates entirely with eyebrow raises. You overhear someone talking about raiders in the west. Someone else says the sea is swallowing villages whole. Another man claims he saw a silver fish with hands. Historians still argue whether early markets were economic structures or cultural performances. The answer is yes. They were necessity and theater, ritual and survival. A place to be reminded that the world is bigger than your fire pit, and sometimes funnier as dusk falls. You settle by a shared fire with your new acquisitions. The others sit nearby, chewing something suspiciously chewy. The old man grins. Told you we'd make it. You nod. You did. You look around, and you realize something. You don't want to leave. Not just yet. You spend the night at the edge of the market, half sheltered by a wagon wheel and what might have once been part of a Roman door. It's not luxurious, but it's dry, and the nearby fire is generous with both warmth and secondhand gossip. People drift in and out of the circle like ghosts with priorities: eating, bartering, storytelling, arguing about prices, and at least 3 separate theories on what happened to that one guy with the missing teeth and the very large duck. You fall asleep with the sounds of trade and half-drunk laughter still curling in the air like smoke, and in the morning, you wake up to fog. Thick, rolling, soup for eyeballs, fog-it coats everything. You can barely see your own hands, which is unfortunate, because one of them is trying to locate your boot. Again, you swear it was just there. And now it's not. You check under the wagon. Nope. You check on the wagon. Somehow, yes. On the wagon. As if the boot climbed there itself during the night. Once rebooted and semi-alert, you find the others at a cook fire, sharing something that smells vaguely like optimism and turnips. The old man nods to you. We leave soon. You nod back, chewing. Not because you agree, necessarily, but because your mouth is full of something surprisingly edible, and the weather has turned your vocal cords into reluctant sausages. Soon enough, you're packed again. Blankets tight, cloaks heavier with trade goods, boots now a little less terrible, thanks to a swap involving beeswax and a very convincing lie about your aunt being a shoemaker. You take one last look at the market, which already feels like it's folding itself back into the mist. Then, you walk. The road home feels both shorter and longer. Shorter, because you know it now. Longer, because your legs remember everything. A mainstream historical fact. Ancient and early medieval trade routes often doubled as migration corridors. Along them passed not only goods, but entire cultures. Language fragments, songs, carving styles, jokes. The same dirty joke might show up in Scandinavia and the Balkans within a few decades, preserved on bone or wall like an accidental time traveler. As you walk, someone starts singing. Not a full song, just a refrain. It catches in the mist and loops backward, like it's being sung by the fog itself. You join in. Everyone does. Because that's how this works. If someone sings, you sing. If someone walks, you follow. If someone offers you fermented goat milk, you pretend to drink it and then pour it behind a tree when they're not looking. The weather shifts. The fog lifts. Rain replaces it. Light, steady, persistent. It soaks your cloak and makes your pack smell like wet regret. But it's not freezing, and that's a kind of mercy. Midway through the return, you pass the stones again, the Roman teeth poking up through the mud. You pause. Press your hand to one. It's colder than you expect. Rough. Old. You feel the history in it. Or maybe just the chill of a world that never truly forgets. And that's when you notice something odd. A stone near the edge of the path moved. Just slightly. Tilted. Fresh scrape marks around it. Someone, or something, was here. You call the others. They shrug. Could be scavengers, says the quiet one. Could be spirits, says the humming one. The old man spits and mutters. Could be squirrels. He's not wrong. Barbarian squirrels were bold. Still, you mark the spot in your mind. Because that's how stories begin. And if nothing else, you've become very good at collecting stories. A quirky tidbit? In some ancient camps, people would deliberately move boundary stones just a finger width each spring. Not enough to change anything, legally, but enough to suggest that land was always changing, always alive. And maybe, if you did it just right, you could trick fate into looking the other way. Eventually, the hills give way to forest again. Then the trees thin. And there, through the branches, home, the camp looks the same, but also different, like something has shifted. Maybe it's the repaired fence. Maybe it's the new goat shelter made from stolen wagon parts. Maybe it's the fact that someone finally buried the hay pile. You don't know. You just know it's yours, that you're greeted like returning heroes. Which is odd, because you mostly just walked, got wet, and bartered for mushrooms. But you've returned, and in times like these, return is enough that a child tugs at your cloak and asks, "Did you bring me something?" You hand them a shiny stone you found near the market latrine. They squeal with joy and run off to declare themselves a rock wizard. You dump your pack near the fire pit, stretch your back until it sounds like ice cracking, and accept a bowl of something hot. Probably soup, definitely roots, possibly part of a parsnip that has now entered its 4th generation of being recycled. You eat it anyway. The others gather. You share what you heard, what you saw. You leave out the part about slipping into the river. Everyone already knows. Later, someone builds up the fire high and throws in a bundle of herbs. It smells like pine and mint and mistakes. The old man leans back, staring into the flames. "We'll go again soon," he says. Everyone groans, but no one says no, because that's life here. Move. Pause. Repeat. Live long enough, and even the terrible parts start to feel important. You lie back on your cloak, eyes heavy, heart full, stomach slightly suspicious of the soup. Above you, stars blink back into the sky, faint but determined. You watch one fall and whisper your name to it, just in case. You sleep long and deep that night, the kind of sleep that presses you into the earth, makes you part of the ground. You don't dream of frost or wind. You dream of bread still warm and sunlight touching your face like a hand you don't need to flinch from. You wake slowly, lazily. Your bones still ache, but it's a good ache now, the kind that says you lived through something. Outside, the morning is golden. Yes, still damp, still muddy, but warm. The sun's not hiding anymore. It stretches its fingers across the camp, catching on cooking pots, drying cloaks, even making the goat's nose shine in an oddly majestic way. You get up, slowly, like you're reassembling yourself. Someone hands you a strip of dried apple. Sweet, chewy, probably slightly fermented. You chew like it's the most important thing you've ever done. You hear laughter, not desperate laughter, not frostbitten laughter. Real, solid, human laughter. You walk the camp, and everything feels new. A repaired roof. A child riding a wooden board like a pretend horse. Someone carving an animal figure from fresh birch. The fire pit has been cleaned. A ring of stones placed just so. Someone took the time to do that. You admire it. Nearby, 2 friends are arguing about whether a fish they caught was magic. One insists it sang. The other says it snored. Both agree it was delicious. You pass them with a nod. They wave. They keep arguing. A mainstream historical fact. Archaeological evidence shows that many early communities built small shrines in spring. Not towering altars, but modest stacks of stones or carved wooden faces near paths. Offerings were left. Bits of food, strands of hair, even cracked tools. These weren't just to gods. They were to moments. To the idea that this season, this year, this little breath of warmth was worth marking. You find one today, just past the edge of the trees. It's not large. A few stones. A braid of grass, a carved bead resting in the center. That someone's been here. Left a piece of themselves here. You add something too. A sliver of that apple. Not because you believe in spirits, but because you believe in trying. You stay a moment, listening. The trees don't speak, but they don't mind your company. You return to camp. You help lift a barrel. You sweep the corner of the longhouse. You carry a basket. You argue about whether that old knife is cursed or just badly made. You sit near the fire as someone tells a story you've heard 5 times already and still love. A quirky tidbit? In some ancient camps, people would retire objects after hard seasons. Not break them, not discard them, but hide them. Bury a spoon beneath a tree. Toss a cracked pot into a lake. Not because it was trash, but because it had done its time. Like releasing an old friend to rest. That evening, as the light fades, you take your old boots, finally giving in to the hole in the heel. and bury them beneath a rock near the goats. You pat the ground twice. Silly. Sacred. Both. As darkness settles, you gather around the fire with the others. A new pot bubbles. A new song begins. Soft. Wordless. Shaped more by breath than by melody. You close your eyes, and you remember the first snow, the cracked trees, the taste of parsnip soup after starvation, the snowball to the face, the river crossing, the bruised apple, the fog, the fire. You think about all the nights you didn't think you'd make it. And you think you did. Historians still argue whether barbarian life was all blood and chaos or something more layered. They dig bones in pots and walls, looking for stories. But you know the truth. You lived it. You weren't a hero. You weren't a villain. You were there, and sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. Wind down. 300 words. And now, let your breath soften. The fire in your mind, once lively, dims to a warm, steady glow. The crackle becomes a hum. The cold memories of snow and storm fade, replaced by the hush of moss beneath your feet and the scent of pine needles on warming air. The camp is quiet now. Not because it must be, but because it can be. You lie back against your furs, the weight of the world no longer something to carry, but something to rest into. Overhead, stars blink patiently, tiny keepers of time, watching without judgment. The goats are asleep. The stories are sleeping too. And so are you. There's nothing more to chase, nothing more to haul, nothing more to prove. You are part of the earth again. A stone in the circle, a breath in the fog, a warm hand against old wood. Let the past stay folded like a cloak by the fire. Let the future be whatever it needs to be, waiting for you on another thawing path. Tonight, just rest. You've earned it.